Hello again. So the next little topic we're going to look at is this idea of cost leadership within a business level strategy. So we'll look at defining cost leadership strategy. We'll look at using the five forces model to explain how above average returns can be earned through a cost leadership strategy and what some of the risks are. So like a lot of business strategy, we know that cost leadership strategy. So like a number of the business strategy definitions, a cost leadership strategy is an integrated set of actions designed to produce or deliver goods or services at the lowest cost relative to competitors with features that we call are acceptable to customers. So they don't have to be different, they don't have to be exciting, they don't have to be special, they just have to be acceptable. And this is generally characterized by a very low competitive price, features which are acceptable to many customers, and relatively standardized products. And you can see some business examples there, again, being Bunnings or the Reject Shop or Kmart or even Tiger Airlines, where some product examples, particularly in terms of face masks or toothpaste or pencils. So some of the value creating activities associated with the cost leadership strategy essentially are there to slim down the cost of an organization as much as possible. We try to mitigate as much cost within the organization and often try to achieve what we call economies of scale when either producing or delivering our product or service. So breaking it up in terms of the value chain and value creating activities, we look at some of the support functions being better integrated. We look at some of the support functions being better integrated in the organization, as well as some of the value chain activities really, as well as some of the value chain activities, ensuring that they are absolutely efficient and at top of the game. So for example, in this video, we're going to look at Bunnings. So how and why they achieve cost leadership through their value chain. So as you can see on the screen, their first warehouse. So as you can see on the screen, their first warehouse opened in '94 in Sunshine in Melbourne, and they are currently the leading retailer of home improvement and outdoor living products in Australia and New Zealand. They are a wholly owned subsidiary of the Wesfarmers Group, who also owns Kmart, Target, Catch.com.au, as well as Officeworks. And they actually used to own Coles Supermarkets as well as a Coles Group as well. However, Coles Supermarkets were spun off in the late 2000s. Wesfarmers' revenue over the past few years has been growing quite steadily from about 26.76 billion in 2018 through to about 36 or 37 billion in 2022. And they employ currently about 53,000 team members across 507 locations. So how does Bunnings do it? They buy in very low-cost products from suppliers and have private label brands. Particularly, they buy large numbers of products at the same time. Their warehouse stores are often very large and can house a wide array of products. You look in the Bunnings, you can go and buy pretty much everything you need, and are often not in a city, but on the boundaries of urban areas because people treat them as a destination store. Stocking shelves are often done by lower staff or lower wage staff, as well as machinery, and specialty staff are in departments. And although there are specialty staff, they sit in departments and don't really move, where the other staff are fairly widely trained and roam about the store. They've tried to automate as much as possible, including the use of self-checkouts, and often you'll see price guarantees in cost leadership strategies. They also have incentives for trade customers. They use low-cost advertising. You look at a lot of the advertising, are actually just their team members that they have in store, and they use quite a cost-effective MIS or management information system, which allows people to not only buy stuff online, but you can actually go and find out which aisle it is and which bay it's in your local store, so that you don't have to go and ask someone in store to find it for you. So some of the typical cost-saving actions and activities that are involved look at building efficient scale facilities, so large, big box stores, essentially. Think about Bunnings here, but think about Walmart, Kmart, Lidl, Target across different countries. Minimizing the cost of sales, research, development, and service. So again, they don't have very high sales costs. They do very little research development because most of their products, if not all of their products, are brought in from third parties or outsourced. And we've spoken about the differentiation in service across the stores already. They very closely monitor the costs of activities that are provided by third-party suppliers and raw material suppliers, and have very large contracts with a number of different organizations in order to facilitate this. They use cost-effective management information systems. They have consistent policies across every store in the country or countries, and they have a really good induction and training system in order to minimize work, in order to minimize waste and inefficient work. They also have to monitor their supplier's performance. So if a supplier is able to or unable to supply, so if a supplier is either able to or unable to supply different products at certain times, will really allow Bunnings to ensure that they have a steady flow, but B, they can actually use that to their advantage to buy stuff when it's cheap. Again, I spoke about the economies of scale, and both in purchasing power as well as in scale efficiencies. So again, I speak about economies of scale in both purchasing power as well as efficient scale of facilities, and delivery schedules, ensuring that they're always on time. We talk about proper pricing. So in Bunnings' instance, they use a price beat guarantee, but they also scan the market regularly to ensure that they remain competitive. So when we look at Porter's 5 forces and the idea of cost leadership, due to cost leaders, due to a cost leader's advantageous position, rivals often hesitate to compete on the basis of price and or lack of price competition. So due to the cost leader's advantageous position, rivals often hesitate to contest on the Rivals often hesitate to compete on the basis of price. And this lack of competition actually leads to greater profits, because how many places can you go and buy the same things that you can at a Bunnings? In terms of bargaining with suppliers, we think about being able to absorb a lot of cost increases due to a low cost position, as well as being able to make very large purchases. And that's where the economies of scale comes in, reducing the actual chance of suppliers having power and using that power. In terms of a bargaining power of buyers, it can often mitigate buyer power by driving prices far below competitors and actually causing them to exit the market. So shifting the power of the buyers back to the firm. And you look at a lot of small hardware shops have closed down in the case of Bunnings, and even some Mitre 10 stores have closed. In terms of potential new entrants, firms can actually frighten off new entrants due to their need to enter on a large scale in order to be cost competitive, as well as the time it takes to move down the learning curve of the Australian market. An interesting example of this is the hardware store Masters, which is a very large store based in the UK and across a lot of the European Union, which tried to make an entrance into the Australian market about 10 years ago. And essentially they came in and tried to compete with Bunnings and failed because Bunnings were able to just undercut them all the time until they lost so much that it didn't matter and they had to close. Until they lost so much that they had to close. Now, even though Bunnings made a loss during this period, it was quite evident the approach and strategy they were using in order to drive them out the market. In terms of product substitutes, a cost leader is also well positioned to make investments to be the first to create product substitutes because they have the economies of scale and often have what we call vertical integration, which we'll talk about a bit later on. These organizations are able to buy patents developed by potential substitutes, as well as price something so low that it's not worth other organizations doing the research and development on these. So some of the cost So some of the competitive risks of cost leadership include things like processes used to produce and distribute costs or services may actually become obsolete due to a competitor's innovations. We look at the cost reductions that may occur at the expense of what customers value. And we've already said that value is paramount because that's what customers are after. Competitors may actually successfully imitate a cost leadership strategy. And you can see here Masters Home Improvement Stores, launched by Woolworths in 2011, actually closed in 2016 because they couldn't compete with Bunnings, as I just mentioned. But the Woolworths Group actually already own BWS, Woolies, Dan Murphy's, Cellar Masters, Big W, ALH Accommodation Group. And so they have a number of areas that they can try to attach their cost leadership strategy. Some of the competitive risks of cost leadership also include things like too low cost may actually eventually rob any perception of acceptable features. How cheap are you willing to pay for something how little are you willing to pay for something before you think it doesn't actually have any value? If you could buy a computer monitor for $1 or a mobile phone for $1, would you still buy it? How low cost can companies go before their reputation and demand for their products decrease? So Demi's Retail Stores or Tiger Airlines. You look at the negative image or negative perception of a number of these low cost or budget airlines. And what firms do you know of that have cut costs so low that the wrong impression has been sent to the customer? We've spoken about Demi's and we've spoken about Tiger, but what are some of the others you can think of? So cost leadership strategy enables firms to produce relatively standardized goods or services at a low cost with acceptable features to a broad target market. It often requires emphasizing efficiency and or tight control at every step of the value chain, including production, manufacturing, sales, and customer service. The processes used to become a cost leader can be the processes that are used to become a cost leader can actually become obsolete if a competitor innovates to try to undermine these processes. A focus on cost reduction can actually sometimes damage the customer's perception of value of an organization. And competitors may successfully actually imitate a cost leadership strategy, particularly if they have a large enough base to start from.